Good morning, everybody. It's been a few days, but I figured it was time for me to make my return. There's stuff to talk about. There is Seahawks stuff going on here, and we gotta go through it. So, took a few days off. Was nice. It's nice being able to go through a few days without having to worry about videos, but gotta come back at some point. And there were some things that happened at minicamp last week that are worth talking about. Some emerging storylines, and I don't want to get caught up in all of them. But some of them are definitely worth getting caught up in, like this one. I'm talking about the Seahawks secondary. So this is going to be kind of our first, and I guess you could call it primary, mini camp storyline, with a pretty long wait between now and training camp. This is going to be something we're going to chew on for a little while here because this is interesting. This is definitely interesting, definitely compelling. And we got to figure this one out. We got to see what's going on here, and we got to hope the team figures it out. Because right now, the Seahawks have what they call an embarrassment of riches in their defensive backfield. And they got to figure out how to distribute things properly. And I think the most compelling thing that is coming from that during this training camp, this mini camp, was what they're doing with Devon Witherspoon. So let's talk this one through because some people definitely buzzing about this one. Some people are even starting to get a little concerned about it. So let's go through this here. So Devon Witherspoon, obviously drafted very high in the most recent NFL draft, a top 5 pick, our highest drafted cornerback since Sean Springs. Played a significant amount of time at slot cornerback in this minicamp. Played a significant number of reps as a nickel cornerback. So right then and there, that's pretty interesting, right? Because Witherspoon did play some slot corner in college football. He was mostly an outside corner in college football. However, he is a little bit small, like a slot corner, and some people believe he will be better as a slot corner in the NFL. But at the same time, there's no way you can do a good job justifying spending a top 5 pick on a slot corner. So people have been saying that, but people have also been acknowledging the fact that if that's how this ends up shaking out, that's not good. Like he could be the best nickel corner in the league. You still look at that and go, you spent a top 5 pick on a really good nickel corner, so what? So some people are definitely getting a little frozen up by this one, wondering what does this mean? According to Pete Carroll, who commented on this, it doesn't mean a ton yet. John Boyle on Twitter says that Carroll says that Witherspoon getting work at nickel is just a chance to see what he can do there, particularly with Kobe Bryant sidelined with a toe injury. Kobe Bryant was our slot corner for pretty much the whole season last year. So that makes a relatively good amount of sense. You've got a guy who proved he could be an effective nickel corner at the college level, a guy whose physical profile may end up slotting in really well at nickel anyway, and then you decide, hey, we've got an injury there. Let's let this guy show us what he can do there because we already have a pretty good idea of what he can do at outside corner because that's what he primarily did in college, and there will be plenty of time for us to see him at outside corner going forward after we get Kobe Bryant back. However, there's another angle here that I couldn't help but pick up on. When Pete Carroll was asked who had the best camp, or excuse me, he wasn't asked who had the best camp, but he said that cornerback Mike Jackson had the best camp of anyone. So for those of you keeping track at home, Mike Jackson is a cornerback, an outside cornerback. There are only 2 outside cornerbacks on the field at any given time. So you've got Tariq Woolen playing outside corner, and then you've got one more outside corner slot for somebody else. If it's Witherspoon, that means Jackson can't really play. He's a backup at that point. But he just had the best camp of anyone, according to Pete Carroll. If it's Jackson, then Witherspoon has to play somewhere else, like, say, the nickel. And through all of this, we have Julian Love, who played a good amount of nickel corner last year for the Giants. His ability to play nickel corner is part of his value. And in order to get Julian Love on the field a good amount, you're going to have to play him at nickel at least some probably, because you still got Jamal Adams at one safety spot. You've still got Quandre Diggs at another safety spot. Yeah, you can go three safeties sometimes, so you can get Julian Love on the field as the third safety, but are you really going to be able to go three safety and three defensive backs? I'm sorry, three cornerbacks? Are you going to get run all over if you do that, kind of like what happened last year? So we've got a little bit of it's a good problem to have, but it is kind of a little bit of a problem, right? You can only get these people on the field so often. So Tariq Woolen's locked in. I think we all kind of know that. Jamal Adams is locked in as long as he's healthy. Quandre Diggs is locked in as long as he's healthy. So what are we going to do with the other outside cornerback spot and the slot cornerback spot? So here's what I'm thinking right now, because right now I think there are a decent number of Seahawks fans, not a huge amount, but a decent number, that are starting to get concerned that we just spent the number 5 overall pick in a draft on a slot corner. And again, I want to stress this. Even if he's one of the greatest slot cornerbacks of all time, that's not a very good use of resources. It's just not. Now, granted, if he did become a historically good slot corner, maybe we would be willing to live with it. We could at least say we got a really, really good and really, really useful player. Because these days, slot corners get on the field a lot. I went back and looked at the snap counts from last season for our slot cornerbacks. Now, you may remember that Justin Coleman started the season as our slot corner, and then we gradually moved on to I don't mean gradually, immediately moved to Kobe Bryant as our slot corner. And he played our slot corner basically the whole rest of the season. And if you combine Kobe Bryant and Justin Coleman's snaps, it's just under 70%. So, roughly speaking, this is not exact, this is not precise, but roughly speaking, we had a slot corner on the field about 70% of the time last year. And that number was actually a little bit low compared to the average NFL team, I think, because our run defense was so bad, teams wanted to run the ball on us more. So we actually had situations where teams would try to get guys like Cody Barton on the field as much as possible because they felt like they could run on us. So we would see less offensive sets that would force us into nickel. We would see less three receiver sets because our defense was at its best when guys like Kobe Bryant and Ryan Neal were on the field almost constantly. Teams figured that out. They went back to offensive sets that kind of forced Kobe off the field and guys like Cody Barton onto the field, and they were able to run all over us. If we're able to address the run defense even a little bit and make it at least okay, I don't think you're going to see that as much, and 70% could become 75% pretty easily. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. The slot corner does matter. And here's the other thing to keep in mind here when you're doing this cornerback math, trying to figure out how to make this work. There are plenty of teams out there that have an outside cornerback slide inside on nickel snaps. I believe the Cardinals did this last year, is just one example off the top of my head, but there are plenty of examples around the league. There are cornerbacks that on base formations line up outside as one of the two outside corners with no nickel on the field, and then on sets where there is a nickel cornerback, that cornerback slides inside. And then another player will come out to play outside corner. So here would be my guess on how this goes. My best guess on how this goes. When the Seahawks this year are in base, so basically two cornerbacks on the field, it's going to be Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. When we're in nickel, when we have three cornerbacks on the field, you're going to have Tariq Woolen outside. Witherspoon slides inside to nickel, and then Jackson comes onto the field as the other outside corner. That way, you're getting full value out of everyone. Jackson and Witherspoon will basically be on the field 100% of the time, which is what you want. Woolen last year was on the field almost 100% of the time, and he was a rookie, a fifth-round rookie. And Witherspoon being a top 5 pick is somebody that you would expect to be on the field close to 100% of the time. But Jackson gets involved as well by being the outside corner on nickel downs. A lot of teams do this. Pretty common. No reason why we can't do it. Now, if we end up going a different way, where Jackson is the permanent starting outside corner and Witherspoon is the permanent nickel corner and that's it, obviously that's a little deflating. But I will say this, that would imply that Jackson beat Witherspoon in the competition. And that might make some people feel a little concerned for the future of Witherspoon, but at the end of the day, he is a rookie, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Jackson, I think, had an underrated season last year. His coverage numbers were solid. His coverage numbers were mighty impressive for a guy who got targeted a good amount because Woolen was such a shutdown corner on the other side. So I don't dread that. I don't think that's a terrible thing. But the question is, the Seahawks have a lot of potentially positive things going on in that secondary. Obviously, it hinges heavily on Jamal Adams staying healthy. But if he does, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge trying to figure out how to get all these guys on the field enough. It's kind of like a basketball team that has too many guys who all want to play X amount of minutes, and you don't have enough minutes to go around. So, if the Seahawks do things like this, I think it'll work out. I think it'll work out with the safeties as well, and I think you can make it work out with the cornerbacks using what I just prescribed. And yes, Trey Brown's kind of getting left behind here, but at this point, I don't know what else I can do. I know I can't depend on Trey Brown, so why spend too much time sweating something like that? All right, that's Camp Storyline 1. Let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Go Hawks.